Hey everybody, it's Dave here from Dragon Hill Games. So Wizards did it! They have completely shaken up Modern. Hogak has gotten the axe and they've unbanned Stoneforge Mystic. This is going to usher in an entirely new era for Modern. I'm really excited to see how the next few months are going to play out. Today we're going to look at how we can utilize Stoneforge Mystic to get some really gross equipment onto the battlefield and attach it to some fatties for some monstrous swings. And hey, if you're already a subscriber, I really want to thank you for being here. We really appreciate your support. And if you're not, please consider subscribing now. We post at least 2 videos a week. And without further ado, I give you Bant Stoneblade.
We always recommend shopping at your local game store. However, if there's something you can't find locally, we have provided a link for every card you see in this video in the description. Using that link will help support this channel.
Alright, let's get into what you guys came for. This deck is primarily going to focus around hexproof and exalted creatures, with Stoneforge Mystic being our engine that drives the damage through. Stoneforge Mystic is so incredibly powerful. For just 2 mana, we get a creature that lets us tutor out an equipment card when she enters the battlefield. She also has the added benefit of paying 1 white and 1 to put an equipment from our hand onto the battlefield. It's this ability that allows us to build our deck in a sort of toolbox fashion, with a bunch of 1-ofs that we can fetch out as the need arises. We are also running 3 copies of Birds of Paradise and 4 copies of Noble Hierarch to help speed up our deck and give us exalted triggers. Next, let's have a look at our beaters. These are the guys that are going to be getting in there and getting the job done. And they're all very powerful in their own ways. Firstly, they all have hexproof, so it'll be very difficult for your opponents to deal with them on an individual basis. And not enough decks run main board wipes, so these guys are perfect in that they will be leaving your opponents staring at a bunch of useless removal in their hands, especially in Game 1. Geist of St. Traff is a heavy damage dealer that still allows all of our exalted triggers to proc while giving us a free attacking angel when we declare him as an attacker. Thrun the Last Troll is nearly impossible to get rid of. He can't be countered, has hexproof, and can regenerate. Oh, and did I mention he's also a 4/4. Even without any equipment on him, he's still a force to be reckoned with. And Invisible Stalker, although being only a 1/1, is unblockable. With stacking exalted triggers and all the nasty equipment we are going to be running, he will become a giant in short order. Okay, so now that I've said exalted about 15 times, let's look at what I actually mean. Along with 4 copies of Noble Hierarch I mentioned earlier, we are also running a couple Sublime Archangels, which give all of our creatures exalted, and 2 copies of Rafik of the Many, who not only has exalted, but gives our creature double strike when they attack alone. Perfect! I also threw in 1 copy of Ajani Collar of the Pride as a tidy way to give one of our creatures flying and double strike with his minus ability. The deck is called Stoneblade for a good reason, and that's because it runs some of the most powerful swords in the game. Sword of Light and Shadow, Sword of War and Peace, Sword of Feast and Famine, and Sword of Fire and Ice all provide specific color protection should we find the need to equip them to one of our non-hexproof creatures, and they all provide game-breaking effects when we hit a player with them. Batterskull is absolutely bonkers. We can fetch it up with Stoneforge Mystic and use her to drop it onto the field. Once there, we get essentially a 4/4 creature with Vigilance and Lifelink. On top of that, anytime we can pay 3 to return it to our hand. This is a great way to recover from a board wipe or rescue it from artifact destruction. I also included 1 copy of Elbrus the Binding Blade. We can drop it onto the field with Stoneforge to avoid paying its steep mana cost, and its equip cost is a paltry 1 mana. It only takes 1 hit from this thing, and it transforms into a 13/13 flying demon with Intimidate and Trample. I've always wanted to play with this card, but if you think it's too cute, then an excellent replacement for it would be a Basilisk Collar. Finally, let's have a look at some of our insurance cards. Steel Shaper's Gift assists us with fetching up equipment pieces if we haven't got a Stoneforge to stick, and Sigarda's Aid allows us to cast our equipment as though it had flash, and equip it to one of our creatures for free. And Simic Charm is a perfect include in this deck. We can either pump one of our creatures to get that final bit of damage through, give all of our permanents hexproof, or return a creature to its owner's hand, which is perfect for getting a blocker out of the way or rescuing one of ours. For the most part, the lands are pretty straightforward. 4 Windswept Heath and 4 Flooded Strand make up our fetches, while 3 Breeding Pools, 3 Temple Gardens, and 1 Hallowed Fountain make up our shocks. Those combined with 3 Inkmoth Nexus as a nice additional backup plan to kill our opponents with Infect, 1 copy of Field of Ruin, and finally 2 forests, 1 plain, and 1 island. And lastly, today's sideboards need good quality answers to good quality decks. Now that Hogak and Faithless Looting have been banned, I think it's pretty safe to run little or no Graveyard Hate in your sideboard. Although we really are going to have to see how the decks shape up in the near future. So for now I've elected to run 3 copies of Leyline of Sanctity, a couple copies of Chalice of the Void, 2 copies of Pithing Needle, specifically for Tron, and finally 3 copies of Nature's Claim as my artifact destruction, and 2 copies of both Remand and Spell Pierce in case I find myself embroiled in a control matchup. And that's the deck, folks.
I really hope you enjoyed having a look at my version of Bant Stoneblade. Decks like this are going to be shaking up Modern for the next months and years to come. What do you think of the deck? Why don't you let me know in the comments section below. Alright, we'll see you guys soon.